Well, hello, I'm Roy Harriman, and welcome to our very first Strategos Security Week on Facebook Live. We are delighted that you joined us, and I am here with Strategos President Vaughn Baker. Vaughn,
Hi,
thanks
Roy.
for joining us.
We're excited to do our first Facebook Live show.
We are so glad, and we appreciate anyone who's joining us live, but we know most people will probably see this later. And if you benefit from it, we encourage you to share it, like it, comment on it, and help us to get the word out. We're excited to do this. One reason is because Strategos has so many excellent resources, and sometimes a question is how do we get the word out? And so this is another way to help equip people and share how that we can be of benefit to them. Vaughn, one of the topics that we wanted to explore today is unfortunately not a new topic, but very recently the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics put out a report that showed violence in the workplace has increased exponentially in the last few years, particularly workplace homicides, for example. It said that in 2010, there were 83, and in 2016, the number of workplace homicides had moved all the way up to 500. Did that information surprise you at all?
You know, it did. It seems like based on current events and things that are occurring in public places, period, you would think that most public places would increase preparedness and awareness. And that report is not only concerning based on the actual violence that has occurred. 866 events occurred in this past year, but also the risks. We saw several other statistics related to risks that increased as well. So it was a concern, and we set our overall record as far as fatalities in the workplace, accidents, as well as homicides, which homicides were the second leading cause of death in the workplace. So it's definitely something that is concerning to us and something that workplaces all over the country need to be addressing proactively.
So this information is out, the word is out that workplace violence has increased exponentially. Do you think, as someone who works often with small businesses, and of course you're a small business yourself, are workplaces starting to get the idea that, yes, it can happen here?
Yes, you would hope. We call that overcoming the big D, that denial that it can't happen here. And, based on social media and current events, we know that it is increasing. But the first step is to overcome the big D, which is denial that it can't happen here. And then after that, what is it we can do? We know that almost all bad acts are preceded by bad body language and bad behavior that's concerned to others. And sometimes that behavior is days, weeks, or even months prior to the actual act occurring. So we need to educate folks in our workplace, our frontline employees, as well as our managers and leadership as far as what to look for and how do you measure risk objectively.
Yeah, excellent thoughts. Now, here's a question, and you've helped me to learn a lot about this as I have studied and followed workplace violence along with you in the opportunity to work on communications with Strategos. And that is, in American culture, we strive to have a wonderful work culture. And many workplaces have achieved it. Employees love to be there. There's good morale, great customers. So a place like that may think, there's not going to be any kind of workplace violence that happens here. Is that necessarily correct thinking?
No, it isn't. Many times one of the other objections we get is the organization is afraid to talk about these topics and prepare for these topics because they're worried they're going to scare people or they're going to increase anxiety. And we know if they're watching the news, they're seeing what's happening. But, the dynamics psychologically of that just aren't accurate. We know fear and anxiety comes from people having a problem without a solution. So once we educate people and we provide them solutions to those potential crisis events that could occur, we actually reduce anxiety in the workplace. We don't increase it. So once we can make people aware of that, that really helps overcome that particular objection.
So yeah, and if you leave, it sounds like what you're saying, Vaughn, is if you leave workplace violence to be the big elephant in the room and you don't talk about it, there's kind of an undercurrent of anxiety and people aren't prepared and they don't know what to do.
Exactly. So we do need to talk about it and, of course, have some proven strategies put in place to not only prevent it, hopefully, but if God forbid it does occur, how do we mitigate or respond to it very effectively and in a time-sensitive way?
And by the way, a number of people have joined us live here. We appreciate you joining us. If you have questions or comments about these topics or any topics related to security, let us know. We appreciate it. We'll try to address them here while we're live. Another thing that came out, Vaughn, in the report was, so when we think about workplace violence, I know my mind normally goes to the idea that it's someone seeking to harm another person. But the report also showed that the number of suicides and the number of overdoses in the workplace have increased dramatically. And I could see an employer, particularly a small business, throwing up their hands and saying, well, what can I do about that? I'm not here to be deal with someone's personal problems.
Well, the two areas that report highlighted, we increased from 62 suicides in the workplace the previous year, and last year we had 291. So it was about a 5 times increase, a dramatic increase. You may think, well, nobody else got hurt as far as a suicide, but we know this about people that are wishing to harm themselves. Anytime somebody's a risk to themselves, they're always a risk to others. If they have no fear of hurting themselves, they certainly aren't going to have fear of hurting others. And of course, we know that many of these people, their personal problems that drive them to suicide, they may blame others for those problems or their coworkers. And very rarely do some people want to take responsibility for their own failures. And they may have failures that aren't their fault. But again, we see other people that may be threatened as a result. On top of that, we see the opioid crisis now that's happening across the country is spilling into the workplace. We saw overdose fatalities increased to 217 just last year. So that's a 32% increase from previous years. And the suicides, we set a record as far as the number of suicides since the census data has been taken in 1992. We set a record of 291 last year.
That's right. So violent behavior, even if it's self-directed, self-inflicted, is devastating to the workplace. And so employers and managers, they need to be able to equip to know how to deal with that. I wanted to call out one of our comments. David Appel says, denial will kill you twice.
Yes, very familiar with that quote, David. Thanks for sharing that. It's absolutely true. It kills any opportunity to prevent or actually increase your preparedness. And then, of course, if everybody's in that denial phase, when God forbid it does occur, it is much more traumatic from a psychological point of view as well. So thanks for sharing it, David.
So Vaughn, a school, a small business. Yeah, let's take a small business, for example. They're doing all they can every day just to knock the widgets out the door, fix the cars, print the paper, whatever their job is. And the idea of trying to own this idea of overseeing and looking for signs in employees might be overwhelming to them, so they just throw up their hands and do nothing. What are some things that Strategos is here to educate and equip businesses, schools, churches, organizations? What are some practical things that Strategos can do to help them oversee, hopefully proactively avoid some of these workplace violence incidents without them having to hire an HR person or give up their day job?
Well, sure. And, even HR people don't specialize in this particular topic. They try to cover it some, but they don't specialize in it. We do specialize in it. We can assist an organization. If you have somebody that's providing, that is giving you some level of concern, I would encourage you not to ignore that. If there is a doubt, the saying we use is, if there is a doubt, there is no doubt. If somebody's concerning you, it's probably concerning somebody else. So we can assist an organization with providing behavior assessments that would be an objective information gathering stage, as well as an objective criteria on how you can measure risk within that particular person. We want to get that person some help before they actually commit an act of violence. And then there's some common sense things that we can teach people what to look for. Coworkers, if maybe the behavior of a coworker is changed suddenly, or their absenteeism has increased recently, there may be something going on in their personal life that we want to try to get them some help for. Absolutely.
So prevention is the best cure, and the workplace violence, that event that never happens, is the best money that's ever spent.
Absolutely. And you said something about prevention is the best cure. I just want to make sure everybody understands prevention is not the expectation. the most protected person on the planet is the President of the United States, and we still haven't been able to prevent it with him. But we need to be able to demonstrate as an organization from a liability point of view that we took reasonable effort to prevent harm to others. And so that's what we need to be able to demonstrate on the backside. We call that due diligence preparedness.
Absolutely. Businesses are certainly familiar with the concept of liability, and not only do they want to protect their people, but they also want to minimize their liability. And that's, as you say, another reason to make sure that you are seeking to proactively address workplace violence.
Yeah, and from a compliance point of view, OSHA's general duty clause now does cover this topic of workplace violence, and particularly armed intruder in the workplace. And you need to be able to demonstrate that you had some level of preparedness and training for your folks, or just from a compliance point of view on the backside of an event, OSHA is going to get involved, and there may be some stiff penalties as a result of that effort as well.
That's right. So the question isn't why should I do it? It's why should I not prepare my workplace? There's just too many issues there.
Absolutely.
Again, we thank everyone who's joined us so far. And if you have comments, questions, let us know. We appreciate you taking time to watch and be a part of the show. And again, if you benefit from the information that's shared here, please share it on Facebook. We appreciate it much. Vaughn, let's move from business security and safety to church security and safety. A lot of people may not realize that Strategos is training in churches every weekend throughout the United States. Strategos is training churches and equipping them to develop safe and secure environments while still maintaining their mission of outreach to the community. Just received some press in the Phoenix area this last weekend where Barry Young was out training. One thing I have noticed is, since particularly the Sutherland Springs shooting last fall, that more and more churches are beginning to arm themselves. And I know that Strategos, again, appreciates the sentiment towards really just having a mindset of protecting the congregation or protecting the flock. But one thing I've heard you talk about many times is there's a huge difference between someone who has a concealed carry permit or just likes guns or has a gun in their glove box and someone who is actually trained and equipped for a firefight in a public setting where there could be a lot of collateral damage.
Absolutely. Because Sutherland Springs happened last November, we have seen a dramatic increase in demand for our church safety and security training courses. We have 9 different courses that we provide. This year, we are forecasting we're going to do 150 courses across the country. So many weekends, we have 2 and 3, 4 courses going on in different parts of the country because of the demand. There's 400,000 churches in the country. So the demand is there and the need is there. We've seen almost a 2,400% increase in violent events in churches since 1999 and 600% just in the last 10 years. So we have a lot of churches that are wanting to do this, and Sutherland Springs really brought this issue to the front. As far as having guns in church, that's a strategic, very important topic that we need to talk about. And there's a lot of things that a church can do before we go to that step of arming everybody. And we want to make sure that decision to arm people is not a knee-jerk reaction. You need to include your insurance company on it and see what they're going to require. See if they will even allow that to occur, or if you need to find an insurance company. And then the question that we encourage leadership to ask, and we don't recommend one way or the other, but we do say leadership needs to make this decision, is we need to look at this topic and ask yourself, what level of threat do we want to protect our congregation people from? If that includes an armed intruder, then we do need an armed response capability. Once we decide that, then we got to decide how we're going to arm those folks or how we're going to train those folks. You brought up carry and conceal weapon training. Carry and conceal weapon training is designed to protect yourself or your domicile. It's not designed to protect others in a raging, where the armed protector is going to be asked to swim upstream in a raging river, meaning they're going to be asked to move through this massive humanity to go find and engage the threat. And that's an advanced skill set that requires advanced training. So if our response is just a knee jerk and say anybody who has a gun, bring it to church with you, you actually may be making your church more dangerous than it is today.
Yes, and I know there's a couple of examples about that I can relate to. One would be the incident in Pennsylvania last year where you had a person who was freelancing and went up and actually wasn't part of the church security team, went and actually shot and killed someone while hymns were being sung. Another example was a pastoral lunch when someone on a church staff, I believe in Kentucky, was passing a pistol around and accidentally shot someone there in the room. So again, those are kind of an extreme variety of examples, but they do show that training is paramount if you're not just simply at a shooting range shooting at a non-moving target.
Absolutely. One of the most tragic examples I can list is an incident that happened a few years ago in Florida where two deacons went into an empty room and one was showing the other one his new gun, and the gun went off and a round went through the wall, hit the pastor's daughter in the head and killed her. It was such a tragic incident and destroyed the pastor and his family. He had to take a 6-month leave of absence. So that's why this decision to do this needs to be taken with just a great deal of thought and a great deal of commitment to excellence when we train our folks.
And Strategos does training for church protectors, is that correct?
Absolutely. Like I said, we have 9 different courses that teach you how to put together a safety and security plan or how to put together your safety and security ministry. Training, one of the single most popular courses and the single biggest step you can take as a church is our intruder awareness response course for ushers, greeters, deacons, elders, parking personnel, and staff and children's personnel, teaching them what suspicious activity looks like and then how to do a lockdown. And then our firearms training, we do a 2-day and a 4-day firearms training. And we base that training on 2 Chronicles. It talks about David's warriors were so good that they had the ability to shoot bows and arrows and throw spears with both their right and their left hand. So about 40% of the rounds you're going to fire in our firearms courses is going to be with your offhand or your other hand. So we're giving people a bilateral capability and also giving them the capability to operate their firearm in positions like standing, kneeling, modified prone, moving forward, backward, laterally, left, and right. So it's a very comprehensive training course recognized by many of our the large church insurance companies out there. And those are courses that we encourage people to get involved with.
Now, just to clarify, do you do the bow and arrow and spear part of the training? You mentioned David and the warriors. No,
we don't. I guess they were very effective for them, but I'm glad that technologies for those sorts of weapons have improved some. So I know I would not be very good with either of those.
Okay. And I wanted to acknowledge another comment from David Appel. He asks, are church employees included in the workplace violence statistics?
No, they're not. And employees probably are included. However, what about volunteers and congregation members that happen at church? Where we have last year we had 108 people that were killed in churches across the country last year, based on almost 250 violent incidents in churches. So those would not be included. So that's a great question.
All right. As we're winding down, I had one other question I wanted to run by you. And this is related to churches arming themselves. So I've seen several news stories about churches that are posting, in effect, signs out in front of their property that essentially say, we're armed and dangerous. What do you think about that kind of approach?
Well, our philosophy on church safety and security training period is, how do you accomplish safety and security in our places of worship without compromising the core mission of your ministries? It'd be easy for us to teach everybody how to turn their church into a prison, but we define the core mission of most ministries is to provide an atmosphere of comfort, refuge, worship, and learning. So how is it we accomplish safety and security without compromising that atmosphere of comfort, refuge, worship, and learning, and of course, sharing the gospel? So that sort of a sign that you're talking about there would compromise our core mission, and it really doesn't gain you anything other than it's what I would call public posturing. We're posturing, letting people know. I mean, I would discourage that sort of sign for that reason, as well as the signs that maybe the no guns allowed signs that you see in some of these places where that could actually invite somebody who's intent on hurting other people, and they think that's a soft target as a result.
Yeah, I will say it did not sit well with me, just in terms of our. I think the verse that you use, "Be as wise as serpent and as innocent as doves," it conflicts a bit with that, where we want to be wise, we want to be secure, we want to be mindful of protecting the congregation, but we don't want to do things in a way that again compromises our mission. So I definitely resonate with what you're saying.
Absolutely. That's Matthew 10:16. That's our program Of course, that's our biblical authority verse for all of our church security programs.
Just one last question for you. We want to give you an opportunity, and we want to share with viewers an opportunity, anything new insights, new opportunities that have come before Strategos, and new ways that people in businesses, churches, and schools can benefit from education or services that Strategos is providing.
Absolutely. A couple of announcements. The first one is just to remind everybody about our Prevail virtual intruder response training system. That's a virtual intruder response online or DVD training system that teaches workplace, schools, and faith-based organizations to train their staff or their volunteers how to respond to an armed intruder. And then second is Barry Young, our Vice President of Church Security Ministries. We're excited to have him leading our church security ministry efforts, and he's going to be scaling our efforts because we know the need is so great in our churches, and he's going to be doing that on a very proactive and directed effort. And so we're going to be you're going to see us scaling up in those areas as well.
All right. So Barry has been a part of the Strategos team for a long time, but he's expanding his efforts and trying to reach more and more churches.
Yes. If you've ever been to a course Barry teaches, he's an outstanding dynamic instructor, and he's also a pastor. So he knows the church world, and he's a police chaplain. So he knows the protector world and the church world as well. So he's just a great resource for us, and we're excited that he's leading this effort.
He does a dynamic job. I've got to sit in on a lot of the trainings, and all of the instructors are very engaging and dynamic. It's not going to be one of those seminars where you fall asleep. Barry in particular, I think he burns like several thousand calories during his presentations because he's running back and forth across the room. We had tried to put a camera on him a couple weeks ago, and it was definitely an athletic event to keep up. So
yeah, I wish we could put his energy in a can and market it. It would be something anybody would want.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate everyone joining us on our flagship Facebook Live program here. Again, if you benefited from this, we encourage you to share it and tell other people about it. And if you want to learn more about anything in the world of Strategos International, you can go to the website listing on our screen, which is strategosintl.com, where you'll find all of our courses, all of our trainings, and a whole lot of information that's valuable to you, instructional videos, blogs, our Strategos Security Minute videos as well. So we thank you all very much for joining us today. We're going to come to you twice a month on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Central Time, and we'll give you a reminder to let you know when we're up. Thank you, everybody, so much. Vaughn, thank you.
Thanks so much.